Get to know Shawn Moody on News Radio WGAN.
We're back again with another WGAN candidate interview. We have with us here today Shawn Moody, who is, of course, the Republican candidate running for governor this fall. Really appreciate you joining us, Shawn. Thanks so much for coming in.
Well, I appreciate it, man. I'm disappointed Ken's not here.
I know, yeah. He got called into court this morning.
You might be able to get a word in edgewise here.
We might have a much more genial conversation, perhaps. But in all seriousness, though, this is obviously the general election. We're going to be wrapping up soon, and it goes by faster than most people think. So we like to have these types of talks to get to know the candidate a little bit better than you might get on the 30-second commercials on TV and the debates and all those things that don't give you much of an opportunity to talk about.
Yeah, I think it's great because, as you know, when you do an interview, a lot of times they get scrubbed, edited,
right.
And it's like, I don't remember saying that. We probably did, and they just use it in a different context. So this is great. It's live. It's unfiltered.
Indeed.
I appreciate it.
So, to start off, really, I think one of the questions that I like to ask just in the beginning here is to get a sense of sort of who Shawn Moody is. That is something that you're not going to get in the commercials, for sure. You might get a little tidbit here and there. I know that the story of how you started your business is something I've heard in little 10-second increments, but you haven't really got the real story about it. So I'd love for you to just start off by telling us a little bit more about how you came to found Moody's and what your early life was like. Where did the drive to do what you did come from, and how did you manage those early years?
Well, I grew up in Gorham. It's my hometown. I still live there. I tell people I didn't go far in life. I live about a mile from where I grew up, and I work 2 miles from where I currently live. My wife and I and raised our family. And Gorham's just a quintessential small town. It's grown a lot, obviously, over the last 50 years or so. But when I was a kid, Gorham was just a sleepy college town. 5,000 or 6,000 population. Everybody knew everybody as that goes. And I just had a incredible childhood upbringing. We lived on South Street, and we moved to Narragansett Street, which the Philbricks were there. It was kind of like a little sports mecca. So we played sports when I was 5, 6, 7 years old, pretty much 24/7. And back then,
you actually went outside and played sports?
Yeah,
not something you see as much
we went
anymore.
inside to eat, right?
Yeah.
Go to bed. So that was the good old days, and I think that developed like a lot of young people's back then. I got a paper route, delivered papers. I helped my brother deliver papers when I was really young. And that's, believe it or not, you learn a lot. You deal with customers, you deal with money. You got to be there, got to get up, got to deliver the newspapers on time.
Yeah, you got a set of responsibilities.
Yeah, I think those small jobs back when we grew up were very critical in establishing that early, like you said, early work ethic was pretty common, a good work ethic. And then, as I got later into my early teens, my mom had struggled with some health-related issues, and my sister went away to Norway. Was a foreign exchange student. She was about 5 years older than me.
Not Norway, Maine.
No.
The actual Norway.
Yep, as an AFS student. And she was an incredible athlete, student, head cheerleader. She was a tough act to follow for me. I came along 5 years later, and my older brother Thad was living up with his buddies up at Watchuk Lake. And my mom just really struggled financially and I think emotionally, got the best of her, and she basically, had a breakdown. She was hospitalized.
Really?
Yeah, and I was home probably around, I think might have been a month. When she
you said you were high school at this point. This was
I was 13.
Yeah,
junior high, and when she came back out of the hospital financially, she just wasn't able to swing the house anymore, and she had been a self-employed hairdresser right there, had a shop in the home, which is really great for us as kids getting home from school and stuff, and she had a garage there. It was a 2-car garage. Let's come back to that. So we moved to a mobile home park down on the other end of town. And I got to tell you, I was 13, and nobody knew who had money, who didn't. None of that mattered, growing up. But I will say, leaving Narragansett Street with all my friends and being a part of the local neighborhood there to go to a over 55 mobile home park was a bit of a culture shock.
A little bit of a culture shock.
Yeah. And I just realized at that point in my life, I said, I'm not going to make a living playing sports, although I love sports. And there was a Corvette repair shop up the street. I used to see the Corvettes rumble up through there. It caught my attention. Things change when you get into junior high. Girls look a little different. You look different.
Suddenly the cars are exciting.
Yeah. So I put my sports career on hold and rode my bicycle up, got a job working on Corvettes. And my mom rented the house, so I was able to work in the garage. So after I get out of school, I would actually do jobs like nights and weekends when I wasn't working at the Corvette repair shop, and earn extra money that way too. So
were you working on engines or was it body work?
Yeah, a little of everything, anything, mechanically inclined. What happened was, as I talk, I start remembering things. I'm sorry, but
Please, that's what this is all for. So
yeah, my brother Thad always had really nice cars, which got me hooked on cars, and he went to SMVTI, it was called back then. After he got out of high school, and I read all of his books. I was an insatiable reader. I read everything, and I read all his books.
Like the little technical manuals on how to,
I knew the stuff that I learned at 13. So I told people that I went to college at 13.
Yep.
And he didn't last. He found out he didn't like working on cars, and he ended up managing the local hardware store. Did awesome. But that was kind of a shift from being kind of the typical kid on the street to, okay, somebody's got to make a move here financially. But I was fortunate, man, as I found my passion in, working on vehicles and helping people. I've always been motivated to want to help people. They come in, even to this day, people only come to us because they have to.
Something's
they're in
wrong.
an accident.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we deal with the emotional aspect of people have lost loved ones in car accidents to just little fender benders and scratches, cosmetic type things. So we love what we've done professionally, but that's how I got started in it. And there were other incidents, like when Mom got remarried when I was 16 for a short period, and she shouldn't have. I tried to talk her out of it.
Yeah.
She didn't listen to me, and I was 16. I didn't listen to her. That's the way it goes, right? Teenagers. And the fella she married was a super nice guy, but he was kind of a weekend binge drinker, and she never drank. So the marriage lasted a few months. And I can remember her
Wow, that short.
Yeah, sitting at the kitchen table. She called me Shawnee. She said, Shawnee, this isn't working out. Like I didn't know, right? This isn't working out. We're going to get an apartment, move into Portland. That was like, whoa, here, this is my hometown. I got a good job, school, I love my friends. And I looked her in the eyes and, Mom, I love you, but I'm not going. I'm not leaving. And so she moved into Portland, and Clint, who was become a really good friend to me. Not really, he was certainly not a father figure, but or type, but he was a good friend. So my dad paid my child support payment directly to Clint, like $100 a month to rent the room, which he was probably happy. He was probably cheaper. I don't know what he was paying prior, but so 16, basically, I was on my own.
Wow.
And I bought a quarter-acre piece of land up the street, and I built that 3-bay shop going into my senior year at Gorham High School. And then,
so you were 17 at that point. I remember that from your commercials that you were 17 when you started the business. So that's how it all began, was basically just a little shop when you were 17 years old. And then, of course, it's obviously grown significantly since then. I don't need to tell you that, obviously, but you see the different locations around the state. It's obviously grew into a very successful business. How did you go beyond just opening up a shop? I mean, how did this become so successful that you were able to expand it and grow it over the years and make it into something that's recognizable for basically everybody in Southern Maine?
Yeah. Well, what happened was the fellow I explained, Clint Allen, was the fellow that owned the junkyard right there in Gorham, and he had leased it out. So picture, us working up the shop. We'd hired a couple guys, Danny Moran, my friend, Greg Jones, Stan Howard. So we're up there working at the shop, building that local business, and Clint had leased the yard out, but the fellow he leased it to had been really antagonistic to the neighbors, and the place it was really in rough shape. I mean, used tires have been hauled in, scrap, this, that, everything else. So Clint put it up for sale. He's asking $250,000 for it, which is, back then, you can imagine.
That's a lot, yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of money back in 1988. But, I took the plunge. So we bought what was a junkyard from Clint Allen, and I really got hooked on auto recycling. It's like, took a lot of the skills and things that I'd learned. I've always been a fiscal hawk, tighten up. And I learned how to get revenue out of waste streams, through cores, scrap. We just did a lot of really cool, innovative things. We reorganized and cleaned the whole yard. So make a long story short, we bought that in 1988. The town was going to shut it down. It was in complete disarray. In 1994, we walked across the stage in North Carolina and accepted the highest accreditation in the Auto Recyclers Association, a national award for operational environmental excellence called the Gold Seal Award. So we took it from a Superfund site to one of the leading auto recyclers in the country. Now, in 1998, we were approached by Ford Motor Company and LKQ Corporation, a venture capital group. We're going around and buying up all the leading auto recyclers to create a national network. Now, Ford wanted to use that as part of their portfolio, their automotive portfolio. LKQ Corporation wanted to extend the network and then take the company public as an IPO. So the CEO they brought on board, the first deal he did was Gorham Auto Parts. It was our deal, Joe Holston.
Yeah.
And I got to be, good friends with Joe, and I would travel with him across the country to look at potential acquisition sites. I'd be the industry guy. He was the venture capital guy, finance guy. He was the former CEO of Waste Management International. Incredible background. And one of the things, Matt, that really struck me was when we went to one of the early manager meetings. It was like this amphi-style theater. There's probably 35 owners there at that time, managers, and the venture capital group, the investors. They did a PowerPoint presentation on the performance of all the yards they'd acquired. Our yard was 30% more profitable and outperformed every single yard they purchased in the whole country. That's what struck me as like, holy smokes, we know how to run, we know how to operate.
So what do you think? How do you attribute that to what you did there? I mean, like, what is it that made you so much more efficient than basically everybody else that's running the same thing?
These trade secrets.
Yeah, well,
I guess
don't reveal too
anything. Now.
Yeah.
No, one of the things that we did, Matt, and we had an incredible work ethic, which always helps, right? There's no replacing a good work ethic, right? If you can't outsmart them, outwork them.
Sure.
We purchased an operating system, a software management system, was the first in the country. It's called Checkmate. And what it allowed us to do is completely computerize our inventory and our procurement. We had a handheld device. This is back in 1996, about the size of an iPad, but it was for all-weather use. So we went to buy auto salvage cars. We could take the sales history information, our current inventory levels, and buy strategically, make and model at a time. That one device was $6,000 back then. It was made by Grid. So the technology that we had in procurement was light years ahead of what anyone else had. They would just keep it in their head. Like if a guy like Fords, he'd buy Fords, part them out.
Yeah.
The other thing that we did is we leveraged and you can see it today, the currency. See, the value of the dollar back then in Canadian was like 68 cents, 70 cents.
About, yeah.
So we bought a lot of product from Canada internationally and sold it into the U.S. market. The other thing that we did was diesels were popular in Europe back then. So we'd buy pickup trucks and take the complete drivetrain, diesel drivetrain. We had standing orders over in the Netherlands. We'd ship our engine components and packages, wire and harness and all, right over to the international markets over in Norway. So
so nobody else had this idea. I mean, this is something
quickly
that
spread. I mean, the idea of selling this software package was to market it throughout the country. So they gave us a deal because we were the guinea pig, if you will. We were the pilot, and that was one of the things that gave us. And it's no different today. Moody's owns our own software package system. Is proprietary. The only one in the country that has that.
Is this something you sell out to other?
No, we just keep it as proprietary, and it's extraordinary. I can pull up an income statement across 11 locations. Okay, we get fiber everywhere, right? All fiber optic, big bandwidth. Pull up a P&L income statement in like 3 seconds, real time, consolidated. Yeah, balance sheet, whatever. If you call on a vehicle, we could say where it is, what stage of the repair process it's in. It's really, really advanced. So that you asked, right?
Yeah,
technology
that's
plays
fascinating
a huge
to see
part,
that.
and that's what we could bring.
Well,
to
that's
state
innovation,
government.
right? I mean, that's innovation.
That's what we bring to state government. Have
you
a
take
matrix.
this established thing that has existed, and you completely revolutionize the way that it's done.
Exactly.
Right.
That's right.
Yeah.
And look what we've accomplished. I just came back from University System Board meeting up in Orono yesterday, and we are launching this new product that Ryan Lowe has worked on. Okay, he's the chief financial officer, and he has worked on this. This is like stuff that we've had, 20 years ago, but it's now getting introduced into higher ed because we're under pressure, right, for cost, enrollment, and all these things. But basically, it's a unified budget and a unified model so that we can base appropriations to the campuses on peer comparisons to like-kind institutions.
Yeah.
So it's not just how much does Farmington need, right? We go by cost per square foot, cost per student, all these analytics that kind of prove are you up or down in this matrix, and what do we need to look at? So if we're way over in a certain matrix, what is it that they're doing, the peer group's doing, that we're not doing, and and implement those best practices so we can keep our costs down in line with the rest of the the institutions. So we've gone from a static, we just need more money model to implementing a one university system.
Yep.
Which we saved $80 million in back office functions and administration costs. And now we've when you look at school funding and things like that, this model hadn't been changed in 50 years. And this is the type of work that the board has done in cooperation, obviously, with Jim Page's leadership and the executive team. So anyway, matrix-driven instead of emotions-driven is the way we need to lead. I mean, you need empathy, you need sympathy, you need emotions too, but you can't ignore the facts and the data to really make some, objective decisions.
Yeah. I do want to get into your time sort of serving in that education realm, because I think that's going to be a huge portion of the campaign as it continues to evolve. So I do want to come back to that. But I do want to wrap up a little bit on sort of you and your past experience and sort of what that's brought to you, what you could do in state government, I guess. When you went through the venture of doing everything you just described to me, I have to imagine you learned a lot of skills. I mean, you get these debates about, who should be the next governor, and you hear stuff about, who has experience, and it's always viewed through the lens of government experience. But God, I have to imagine that kind of thing would give you certain skills that you just wouldn't have acquired anywhere else, right?
For the listeners, draw a visual on this. Okay, this kid from Gorham grew up, right? I think I was 40 years old at that time. I headed up what was called a business improvement team. So I recruited like 3 or 4 former yard owners. These are skilled operators. And we'd meet at newly acquired sites across the country. Bakersfield, California, Birmingham, Alabama, Houston, Texas. These are big operations, $25, $30 million operations. I'd walk in there with 2 or 3 of my peers on a Monday morning. They didn't know me or have never met me in their life. And in 3 days, come up with a business blueprint in cooperation with management and the crew. Okay, how they're going to improve productivity, production, sales and marketing. We'd break into groups. So let's say Lauren might take sales and marketing. Okay, you might handle procurement. And I may just look at inventory control. We'd meet that night, have dinner, kind of talk it all over. In 3 days, the CEO, Joe, would fly in, would present to him, this is a blueprint, how we're going to improve sales, 20%, cut costs by 15%. And then I'd be the liaison after post-visit to follow up with them if they're having problems, outfitting, searching equipment, whatever it may take. So I spent about a year and a half flying virtually all over this country, going into areas of, like I say, Birmingham, Alabama. And what I learned, Matt, this is critical. What I really learned was if you want to find out what's going on in an operation, go talk to the people doing the work.
Yeah.
First. So I'd get there early. I'd help load the truck. I'd go out back. I'd walk, look at the racks, look at the inventory. I'd get a picture and talk to people that were doing the job. And then I'd go in and talk to the location manager, right? And if things aligned, great. But sometimes they didn't align.
Yeah.
Say, geez, we haven't seen Bob since LKQ took us over, and all he's doing now is paperwork. Never gets out of his office. Those. Yeah. So when you look at my ability to go into an organization, say the university system, right? USM, 4 years ago, the students took over the board
crisis,
meeting. Took over the board meeting. Yeah. Right, exactly. $16 million in the hole. Now we just put $8 million in the budget stabilization fund. Enrollment's growing. Got a good leadership team up there.
Yeah.
So, that's my strength is organizational development and effectiveness. And it now at this stage of my career, it just comes natural to me.
Well, that's the thing that's important to me. I mean, when you're evaluating people that are asking to be the next governor, you could go to school and get an MBA from Harvard, and you could come out when you're 26 or 28 years old and start a business and do it that way. Or you could get the skills from actually getting your hands dirty and having a sink or swim mentality. I mean, like if you're starting a business at 17 and you're doing everything you just described to me, I mean, you had no other choice. Like you would not have ended up successful if you didn't acquire those skills.
Back against the wall is a pretty good motivator.
Seriously, in the real world. I mean, and that's what I think a lot of people find appealing about your candidacy is that those skills were acquired in a way that was tangible and real, and it's not all an academic exercise for you. It was sink or swim.
Yeah, and I think again, I'm a typical Maine. I'm not going around these things that people are hearing on this radio the first time they've heard it too, because I don't go around bragging or saying did this, did that. That's what happened yesterday to me. Is I look at life like looking out in your vehicle, right? I'll use a automotive analogy. You get the windshield, it's big because you can see what's coming at you and where you're going. You get the rearview mirror is small. You can glance, right, see what's coming at you from behind. But I've never lived my life driving in the rearview mirror. I'm looking ahead at what's next. What do we need to do to be competitive, to lead the next 2 to 5 years, whatever the case may be. I'm not going to get hung up in ancient history. We got to look ahead. So one of the things, Matt, wrap up on that is important, I think, for your listeners to know, is the LKQ was a bit of a risk factor against the Ford Motor Company. Ford Motor Company was publicly traded, $58 a share at that time for stock.
Safe. Yeah.
Exactly, Matt. I went with the LKQ because the guys that they acquired were really passionate about the trade, about the industry. They were the best of the best. Some of these people I'd been on peer groups with, friends. And so we took that calculated risk. Again, that's important in leadership, okay? Calculated risk. That went as an IPO. Now think about that. Taking that junkyard from a Superfund site to actually being traded on the public market, okay, on Wall Street. That came out at $13 a share, went to 40 split, 40 split, 40 split.
Wow.
That company today has a market value, a market net worth, I think it's around $10 billion. $10 billion. Think about that.
That's a good bet. Yeah.
And I'm hanging around with these CEOs that helped put this all together. I mean, the knowledge that I absorbed, I'm a sponge for knowledge, I can't explain it to you. How they did Viacom, they did Blockbuster Video. These guys were extraordinarily gifted people, and they know how to make deals and make things happen.
Well, so you didn't stay in just business. Obviously, you're running for governor now, and this is not your first experience in public service in some fashion. I mean, you've obviously drifted into wanting to serve the community in some fashion. So why don't you talk to me a little bit about, after being successful in business, like what drew you into trying to make the political world around you better and the education world around you better? I mean, what got you involved in the first place?
Well, I think we've kind of been on a parallel track. When I met my wife, Chrissy, she kind of slowed me down, grounded me a little bit. She worked at Goodwill Industries, with cognitively disabled adults, and I used to go on field trips with her to ball games and recreational opportunities and things of that nature. And what my mom had gone through and experienced, and I've always had a strong desire to help people. And I think early on, serving on the comprehensive plan committee in Gorham, the transportation committee. I was on the bypass committee.
Now, how did that happen? Did you have an interest in it, or did people recruit you in? Saying, Shawn, you got to do this.
Yeah, I'd get recruited.
Yeah,
I had enough going. We were running like 4 businesses at that time.
Yeah, that's kind of why I'm asking, because I have to assume that you get asked to do it, and you're like, oh, geez, I don't really have much time for that.
No, I was.
You ended up saying yes.
Proud, honored, honored that they reached out. So I think that was my introduction into getting involved at the local level, and that expanded and extended into when Governor LePage got elected. He and I had seen each other at a few events, and he was very forthright. He'd say, look, I want to get you involved. This is something that you can see that you could help the people of Maine. Would love to have you. And so it was really his prodding. It's what got me thinking. I said, you know what? I'm passionate about education. I'd been on a school business roundtable in the town of Gorham over the last 7 or 8 years. And I looked at the university and the community college systems like, man, they just competing against one another. You can't transfer credits. There was just a lot of systemic problems that I saw, challenges facing public education. So the governor was able to appoint me to both of those boards. And I would, I'm just really proud of the fact that we've been able to get those two systems to collaborate at a level never seen before. And it's, again, a lot of good people, a lot of good things going on, but you need that continuity that they didn't have.
And so, as you look back on your time there, I mean, obviously you have a number of things that you're proud of. You've mentioned a couple of them. Obviously, the credit transfers and having them come together as one university system almost. How did that get accomplished? I mean, was this a total team effort? Were you driving some of these reforms from ideas that originated with Shawn Moody? I mean, how did the success happen?
Well, it's team effort, no question about it. I'll give you the university system as an example. Okay, the first trustee meeting I had was in April. It was up at the chancellor's office up in Bangor. And I had 2 goals when I went up there. Just, again, a lot of people get excited about helping and then they're going to come up with 20 things, right? What are the top 2 or 3 things? Be reasonable, realistic. So I went up there, one of which was straightening out USM. That was really one of the top priorities. It was just a disaster at that point. So I went through the trustee orientation, they explained the time commitment, fiduciary responsibilities, they have a formal process. And they got done. I said, I looked around the room and I was like, why are we here? And they looked at me like, oh boy, here we go. He's a new trustee, right?
The new guy's here, right?
What do you mean, why are we here, Shawn? I said, well, why aren't we on a campus? I couldn't find this place. I couldn't park.
Yeah.
Why aren't we on the campus eating the food and close to the students? That was kind of like in April. Well, in September, we publicly announced that we're going to shut that system office down. And we displaced basically 157 people. That's kind of a big deal. But to me, from a cultural standpoint, okay, think about me meeting with the faculty senate. Okay, we went around a table of 20 or so faculty members, passionate. USM had voted no confidence. They hadn't had a contract. I mean, they chewed my ear literally for like an hour straight, right around the table. They just took turns to the point where one of them spoke up and said, geez, Shawn's sat here patiently. He hasn't, we really ought to see what he's got to say, right? So I looked at all of them, and I said, I don't have a comment. I just have one question. So they're all like, how could you listen to all this and just boil us down to one question? And I made a commitment to them. I said, look, we're going to get this straightened out. Trust me. My question to you is, are you going to be able to let go of all this baggage that you've had over the last 20 years and move it forward with us? That's what you got to ask yourselves. I don't have the answer to that. Maybe you do, but I don't have any baggage. I came in here. I'm not,
right. You weren't there for the fights of the past, right?
Right. So I've got a fresh set of eyes, and I know that we can move USM forward, and I'm committed to helping do that. And, to them, I think that was a real provocative question. And I think historically now looking back, I think I give the faculty a lot of credit. I think they really did make the attempts that we needed to, those really, really tough decisions, the entrenchments that happened, the layoffs. It's terrible. But we got back on track. Well. Yeah, get back on track. So getting USM back on track was critical. Here's another thing that I said. I asked the executive team, I said, what's the process of hiring a president? And they said, well, that's something that we initiate, search, team, committee, whatever, this and that. I said, well, where do we stand with USM? We need a new president. And they're like, well, we're going to do that in the fall. Now, bear in mind, this is April. I said, the fall? You know
when
how many
school starts,
Yeah, you know how many cookouts happen in May where people are like, where are you going to school? What are you going to do? Don't you think it would be wise for us to announce that, hey, we're going to have a search?
Sure would be.
So those are the types of things, man. I'd like to be the person that says what needs to be said to the person that needs to hear it at the time they need to hear it. And that's, I think,
kind
a
of
rare
cut through
quality.
the noise in
Exactly.
some way. Yeah.
Right. There's no good for me to have the thought riding in my pickup truck back home, right? Or tell my buddy when I get back home. You got to tell what needs to be said to the person at the right time. And I think that's something that I've proven in my career that I'm capable of doing, and it matters. You've got to speak up in the right way too. Not get mad, angry, whatever. Just be emphatic and say, look, this is what we need to do. You're going to help us.
Yeah. We're talking to Shawn Moody, who's, of course, the Republican candidate who is running for governor this fall. Will be on your ballot in November. Just giving a broad overview of sort of his background and what he plans to bring to the office of governor. You ran in 2010. You had mentioned, the education opportunities came from a meeting with Governor LePage, who won that year. But you ran that year as well. And, I remember that. I actually covered that race quite a bit and watched it. And, I heard a lot of really good things about you that year, but you weren't able to obviously win. You got, I believe, 5% of the vote that year.
Right.
And ran as an independent. Why did you run that year? What drove you to do it, and what did you learn from it? I guess because clearly, you're in a really good position to win this year. So I think that there's a lot of lessons learned. The thing
I like about you, Matt, is you always hit the passion points. You know what I mean?
I know.
No, these are the things that that I'm really, really passionate about. Yeah. Running for governor is kind of a big commitment.
It's a huge commitment. People don't appreciate that. I mean, you give up your life for a year
in terms of like running for office. Yeah. And didn't really have any political ambitions to speak of. Okay, two things. When President Obama ran, he made the statement about Joe the plumber. You remember that?
Oh, yeah, back in 2008. Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely.
To me, here's what ultimately he became the President of the United States. And to me, that demonstrated the elitism of people that have gone to school and been successful, in the educational realm, look down their nose at tradespeople.
Yeah.
And I'm a master craftsman. And I was offended by him saying that, and I resented it. because he stood right there on the public stage. The other thing that he said that I kind of gave him a pass at first, but then I was a little naive. He was saying he started to try to create the narrative, let's tax the rich. Do you remember that? This was almost 10 years ago. Let's tax the rich. Now, what he didn't say, and I hold him accountable for that because he did know, and the Democratic Party did know what they were doing, is they didn't put the little addendum to that to say, we're talking about every single small business in America. Right. It's not the individual tax return. It's the businesses, S-corps, LLCs, where the income passes through, like Moody's, passes through the company to Chrissy and I's personal tax return. Yeah. So on paper, yeah, we've earned a lot of money, but it's the income. Reality, right. We've got an $8 million a year payroll. So $200,000 is going to cover 1 week's payroll.
Don't you think that's exactly why that happens, though? I mean, it's most people out there don't know that that's how it works. Matt, and so you say tax the rich guy, and you just think of the guy who has a martini in his hand and a cigar, and he's in a back room, and he's making all these business deals and making billions of dollars, and you don't think of that guy.
So those two things, they attacked the trades, which built this country and rebuilt this country, and it needs to be rebuilt again. And they took advantage of people being naive about tax. How would they know tax policy? Sure. Never been in business before. And they try to leverage and create a wedge between people who have been successful and the people that feel like they ought to, hey, we ought to get more of that, what you've earned or worked hard, sacrificed. You're building something, for the families that you are responsible for. So I was like, all right.
Kind of fired you up a little bit.
Time out, exactly. Yeah. So I probably should have run for president in hindsight, not governor. But that's kind of what motivated me. But here's an interesting thing, and I know the listeners will be interested in this dynamic. In hindsight, what made it extraordinarily difficult, impossible for me to get traction, whatever. If you look at Governor LePage's background, his history, there was so much in common.
Yep.
Elliot Cutler was running on a business background.
Yep.
Even Kevin Scott's.
I remember Kevin Scott.
Think of this. I want the listeners to really think about this. If you take the accumulative total percentage of votes for the business people, the four of us in that race, was 80% of the Maine voters. And Senator Mitchell, I think, got 19%, who is, by profile, someone that's been in the system, that worked hard, been a public servant, served in the legislature, eerily similar to the face-off that we've got going on right now.
Yeah.
The difference is I'm not competing for identity.
Right. Kind of have it carved out on your own, yeah.
Well, I think it's clear to any voter, okay, Moody's an outsider, and he's an accomplished business guy. And the Democrats have put up another kind of career politician, someone that's been in government their whole life that really, may not be attuned to what's going on the street.
You bring that up, and I think it's one of the big lessons we're learning in politics over the last probably 6 or 8 years or so, is that there is a real hunger out there for authenticity and candidates that express something that feels like that understands me, as a voter. And you look at a race like this, 2010, the President Trump, I mean, you go down the line, you find that the people who are either outsiders or blue-collar folk or people who have, I think, an authentic personality tend to be winning over and over and over again across the country. And you look at this race, I mean, your primary is an unbelievable example of that. Yeah. I mean, you were different than the other candidates, and you won 59%, I believe, at the end of it. So it was, I think, a real big expression of that. I mean, is that what you're seeing on the trail? Is that hunger is still out there?
Matt, it's just, it's hard to describe. There's just, and Lauren, could talk about it. It's when we go places, it's grassroots people. It's we went to a pancake breakfast before the Moxie Festival. I mean, they had a crew huddled up in the back that were cooking the pancakes and stuff. They shut the grill down. I mean, they got 40 people in line waiting to get pancakes. They cleaned the grill off, and burn them, and said, we want a picture. So the guys cooking the pancakes, the group, they wanted a photo. And it's just people, just regular salt-of-the-earth Mainers. I think they're quiet. They don't protest. They're not on the blogs. They're not calling into the talk radio, whatever. They're just out there quietly doing the work, supporting the families, and I think that's where our support is.
I think that's true, but don't you think that comes from just years and years of disappointment with, the professional politician class, where you have people that, have a really good resume. They've been in government for 20 years and I've been this position and that title and whatever. And you can elect those people. Right? I know how government works. And you get these people in office, and then it feels like they don't even listen to me. I mean, isn't that really why so many people are interested in that kind of a message?
I think, and I'm being a little bit probably self-serving in saying this, but I'll be open about it. Me personally, if you want, I look at government as an organization, a nonprofit organization. Our private business is an organization. It's running an organization. The university system is an organization.
Yeah.
So government is an organization. So if you've had, 40 years of success, proven track record of success running organizations, then the probability of you being successful running another organization, it's just, a lot.
Pretty high.
Yeah. Versus like a President Obama, for example, who hadn't really run an organization. I think the risk of somebody that hasn't run an organization is exponentially high because, okay, we're going to find out on the job? No.
Yeah.
Show me what you've accomplished, through your organizational experience, effectiveness, cost reductions, hiring, all these things, sales and marketing. I mean, I don't think these candidates, have experience in these critical areas.
Yeah. And the other thing about it, too, is that, like, a government insider is someone that has the perspective of, this is how we do things a lot. I think that's the other part of this, too, is they've seen how government works. Whether they might nibble on the edges here or there, they think that, we're doing pretty good. We're kind of in our lane and we're doing the right thing. Whereas an outsider frequently sees what they see in government and they see so much that's broken and needs to be fixed. And it's almost like a problem of perspectives with some of these candidates. And I'm going to harp on this until I die. I think this is why candidates like you are succeeding in primaries and in general elections. And candidates like Libby Mitchell in 2010, for instance, and maybe Janet Mills this year, if the campaign goes in your direction, are consistently running into trouble over the course of many elections. I have to imagine that's part of it. Yeah,
I think if you look at Joe Holston, okay, you mentioned him earlier, LKQ Corporation CEO. Joe Holston, probably, if he had had a flat on the side of the road, probably couldn't have changed his own tire.
Right.
Seriously. He had absolutely no automotive industry knowledge. None. Zippo. And he came in and grew that organization to a multi-billion dollar. Why? Because he knew how to grow an organization. It doesn't matter if you're in the automotive industry, if you're in government, or if you're in the private, nonprofit sphere. You see things and you know how to motivate people, incentivize people, create the outcome, the desired outcome that you want, ultimately, how to get there. So you develop the ability to have the vision. This is where we need to go. This is what we need to accomplish. But then from a tactical standpoint, you can do the grassroots or get in the weeds, whatever you want to call it, to actually make that happen. That's where government goes off the track because people involved in government have never really implemented anything successfully. So they can talk shop and create this panacea, healthcare for everybody, and all these things, but they have no clue on the wheels that need to mesh to actually make that happen.
Yeah.
And I think that's hopefully, what voters will see is that you can have all the greatest ideas in the world, but if you can't implement them and get people to buy into and build consensus around your ideas and your vision, you're not going anywhere.
Yeah, I got to say, the skills that it takes to win political races are not the same skills that are required for implementing radical change in government that might need to be happening. And that's one of the appealing things for me about outsiders is that. It's that, you have somebody who's running for U.S. Senate and they can win because they can promise every wonderful sounding idea in the world. But once it comes time to start writing that budget and start finding, what is the good place to cut and what's a good place to reform and where should we be investing and where should we be changing what we do, those skills are not present.
Right.
And that's what Shawn Moody's candidacy is.
Well, one thing I want to
probably fighting against, right?
Yeah. One of the things I want to pledge to the people out there, and I've done it, and I continue to do it through November, is that we're going to become matrix driven. The thing about Maine is we're compassionate. We want to help. The opiate crisis is a good example of that. There's so many organizations right now springing up to try to help combat, the opiate crisis, which is great. But we don't have an aggregator of information which the state should provide to know which programs are effective, which ones aren't effective, which ones do we resource and scale up so we can feel the benefits across the state, and which ones are not effective and they're just draining resources, as we speak.
Yeah.
So what I've said repeatedly is we're going to ask each organization, each department to create a series of metrics like we've done at the university system. We've got like 10 metrics. You can go right on the website and look them up. Student enrollment, right, is a very important matrix to measure. We've got cost, that we measure. We've got these 10 matrix that anybody can go in, public citizens can go in and look at how we're doing, how we're trending in comparison to other states or peer institutions. And taxpayers should be demanding that. We can't keep funding programs that we're not able to hold accountable. We just don't have the resources to do it. And that's one of the biggest things that I can bring to state government is put a bright light on things, Matt.
Yeah.
Even our bond initiatives. I think any bond that goes through, the voters vote for, you ought to be able to click on that bond and see where every check, have a check run. So you see where every dollar went, to what contractor, how much was spent, the date of the check. That's not hard to accomplish in today's technology environment.
Right.
So that taxpayer can click right on there. Okay, we spent $8 million on, we're going to clean up the water or whatever it is. You can see where every check went, who it went to, and there's some description on what it was for. Don't you think taxpayers deserve that?
They certainly do.
Wouldn't that be refreshing?
It would be. It would be. We're talking to Shawn Moody, who's the Republican candidate for governor this fall. Shawn, when you're looking at the last 8 years of Governor LePage's tenure in here, one of the things that was frustrating to watch was a lot of good ideas went to die in the legislature, where there was a lot of partisan bickering, but there was also a lot of fights with the governor and back and forth. It just seemed to make a very acrimonious relationship in all directions. It just didn't seem terribly productive. The way that American society is today, and I think Maine politics is today, I don't know if the Democratic Party and the Republican Party are going to be any less or any more interested in working with each other and being nice to each other than they are today. If you get elected and you have a very pragmatic platform, I think, which is one of the things that's attractive about you. Are you worried at all that it's going to run into some problems politically with these people that are in the legislature that are currently?
No, I really don't,
having
Matt.
such a hard time?
That's really my strength. My strength is dealing with people. I've dealt with people my entire life, from starting out. And believe me, if you don't take good care of people, like customers, they don't come back. You don't take good care of your coworkers, they don't come back. So I know how to build long-term relationships with people based on trust and respect. And I'll just give you a real example. We were in front of the education committee to get appointed to both boards. Now, the community college was a slam dunk. I'm a blue-collar guy.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great, Shawn.
Makes sense. Right.
But I said to the governor, I said, Governor, I'm not trying to be a jerk, but if you can't get me on both, I don't want to be on either one. It's not the purpose. And he understood that. Because the university system, I get some pushback. It's like, well, what are you going to bring to the table, Shawn? You don't have too many diplomas on your wall.
Right.
What how
many PhDs do you have, Shawn?
Okay, but what are you going to bring to the table? And one of the ladies asked a really good question. She says, you don't know how political it is, Shawn. How are you going to deal with the politics?
Sure.
And I said, Senator Alfon gave a glowing recommendation to make this happen. Yeah. Chief Justice Softly was in the room when I signed the legal portion of this transaction. Yeah. And Governor LePage is the one that appointed me or nominated me. So you've got the head of the executive branch, the head of the judicial branch, and the head of the legislative branch, all in agreement that they think this is a good move. And then I said, and by the way, has Governor LePage and Senator Alfon ever agreed on anything?
Right.
And they just burst out laughing. It's, yep, got it, Shawn, we're all set.
Yep. So
I think, my ability to, like I say, establish that relationship and work with people. I'm going to work with the legislature. I absolutely have to get the things done. It's going to take bold and it's going to take courage to do the things, reforms like in K-12 education that I want to see, our VOC programs, reforming, our career tech ed, reconstructing mental health. These are going to take a lot of interactivity with the legislature, but I think we've got common goals is how we get there.
Yeah.
And I'm confident that they will see that I know there's a lot of Democrats right now with Moody signs on the front of their lawn, and I hope that carries forward into November and we can get enough of the vote to be able to convince the legislature.
Have an actual mandate to really kind of go forward
Matt,
with.
Say, look, Moody's got a vision. He's got great ideas. And these not all original ideas, you know what I mean? But he has got a vision how we're going to implement and incentivize people to make these things happen that are going to be crucial. And the governor has done an incredible job of getting our fiscal house in order, which was the heavy lift.
Yep.
And I say to people, well, what's it going to be like, being governor? I say, I'll tell you what, there's going to be some tough days. But on my worst day, I'm going to remind myself, my worst day is probably going to be better than Governor LePage's first day.
Yeah.
Think about what he walked into.
Yeah. It was quite bad. I can absolutely assure you.
So, when you think about transition, right, Matt? And I wish Ken was here because he'd be like, oh, no government. Man, Governor LePage has his administration intact, in place.
Yep.
That's what I'd be walking into.
Yep.
Imagine if, let's say, Janet Mills is the governor.
Right.
You talk about
Gotta build it
turmoil.
from scratch, yeah.
Exactly. So no logical person could argue that the Moody transition would be much smoother and effective than a Mills transition would be.
So obviously, the fall campaign is now, happening in earnest, and, debates and TV interviews and all those things are occurring. But in terms of issues, we're not going to get into too many of them today because we wanted to learn more about you. But what do you see on the horizon, I guess, as the big things that are going to turn the election and I guess in your perspective, turn them in your favor? What are the issues that you're hearing the most on the trail, and what do you care about the most as you're talking to people across the state?
I think at the front of all of this is to be able to lift people's incomes, with good paying jobs and create an environment that's business friendly. Again, people have been saying that. Governor LePage has been working hard on it, and it's been extraordinarily difficult with the tax increase we got coming and the tax situation we're currently in. A lot of work to do. But I think outside of economics, which is really my wheelhouse, what not many people are really looking at me as we kind of unmask my resume, and I appreciate you meeting with us today, Matt, to talk more about my resume. The educational experience that I've had and what I bring to the table, because I think education reform in terms of reconstructing our voc and career tech ed programs to be the best in the country. You can't hire tradespeople. And 40 to 45% of our young adults are not going to college, and we haven't.
Oh yeah, and I got to tell you, the ones that do oftentimes are becoming unhappy and miserably failing because they're not in the right spot. They're not learning skills that are going to help them in their lives and careers. They're going because they kind of felt like they had to go to college and are a little aimless. And I think that having that kind of an education can be a huge, huge benefit to a lot of folks like that.
And take you right back to President Obama, Joe the plumber. Don't think for 1 minute that doesn't exist in our current K-12 education system right up through the ranks. People are passionate about education, so they unfortunately have become a little bit closed-minded in what is the, what is your definition of education?
Right.
It's not all classroom. And I think what education and educators are finding more and more is experiential learning through apprenticeships, on-the-job training, work study. All of these things extraordinarily valuable. So those are the things that we're going to promote, because our employment community, employer community is hungry and starving and frustrated for people, right? For good people. And they're so frustrated with our educational system because it's so siloed. Yeah. It's like Horton here's a who, So two things. We're going to take care of these young adults that are now on the street, on drugs, idle hands of the devil's workshop. They're breaking into your car. They don't have the skills necessary to go out and make a good living and live a good quality life here in the state of Maine. We're going to focus on that population that's out there and coming through a pipeline. And we're also going to convince educators, I've been beating this drum, stop telling our young people there's no opportunity here. Right. We got full employment. People are aging out. Young people have more opportunity for upward mobility here in the state of Maine than ever before in the state's history. We've got clean air, clean water. We're the safest state in the nation. We're going to launch a marketing campaign that's going to get former Mainers, young Mainers with talent back
coming
here.
Back, yeah.
Yeah,
get those
reinvigorate our rural communities up, because people power the economy. If you say, oh, well, we ought to get a business up in Limestone, for example. Well, guess what? There's a person that's going to run that business or own that business and grow that business. So it's all about people. How do you motivate? How do you incentivize these young people to come back to Maine and revitalize our rural communities and our rural economy?
So obviously, if you get elected, you're going to have an administration. You'll have some attempt at trying to implement those things. What do you want to be remembered for? I mean, this is a question I always like asking candidates because it makes you sort of think back into the future about what you may have accomplished. Governor LePage, now looking back at his 8 years prior, that might be a different answer than if I were to have asked him that question right as he came into office. What is your legacy versus what did you want your legacy to be? What do you think yours is going to be once you came in?
I'd like to lead Maine from the bondage of bureaucracy. I just really feel like we've got this, level or layer of administrative overhead. And like I said at my, acceptance thing on the nominations, like the people doing the work are tired of the people that don't do the work telling us how to do the work.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care if you work at a credit union, if you're an educator, no matter what you do, you got to fill out all this paperwork, all this compliance,
Yep.
All this bureaucracy that's kind of settled in
Suffocating.
on us.
Yeah.
That this produces no value, no real value. It's time robbing people from enjoying their lives and being able to be a little bit more free thinking and free spirited instead of being saddled with all this anxiety and tension about how the heck am I going to make my healthcare payment, or that the cost of living has risen dramatically faster than wages, and has put Matt, working family like you,
Yeah.
you and your wife have established a wonderful family. We need families like you to grow in the state of Maine and participate.
Yeah, it's hard though. That's the thing. It is definitely hard to do that today.
Yeah, so I really not think it past November at this point, but I would just like to say, it's just like the organizations I've been involved with. In 2000, 2001, they said Social Security is not going to be sustainable or may not be solvent.
Yeah.
What do? We reacted to that by creating the ESOP. So a third of our company now is owned by our coworkers. So they have a 401k, the ESOP retirement, and Social Security. They got 3 legs under their retirement stool because I take responsibility for people I work with dead serious, and it's up to me to provide that pathway for them. I don't want to ride by their house and see, the shingles blown off the roof or the driveway's uncapped, the lawn's not mowed. It's not acceptable. People work hard in Maine, and they ought to be able to live a good life and position themselves for a good quality life after work.
Well, we didn't talk about that when we were talking about your sort of business background, but that is a huge part of what Moody's is that sort of ownership mentality,
Culture. Absolutely.
that culture that's there. And I got to tell you, it's incredibly impressive from an outsider to look into to see that kind of thing happening. And what's interesting is that I don't think a lot of people that are critical of the rich or business owners or whatever think that anybody wants to do that. And what I think they fail to understand is that business owners do want their employees to have a nice house and to have good wages and to work well and be healthy and have good families and do all those things. And you put your money where your mouth is in that respect. I mean, what made you do that? Was it just a feeling that people would work better that way? Was it sort of a feeling of family? I mean, where did that come from?
And again, talk shop. I hope a lot of people out there in business are really listening, because these aren't like trade secrets, but these are things I want to share with people to help them better run their organizations. We started open book management back in the 90s. So every coworker knows what our revenue is, our profit is, our customer satisfaction index, our KPIs. This is back in the 90s. And those are the type of the leading best practices, if you will. We give 10% of our after-tax profit back to the coworkers in the form of profit sharing.
Yeah.
So again, you need, like you said, man, Matt, you hit on something that we ought to run in our campaign, Lauren. We'll talk about it after the segment. This is our state.
Yeah.
Why can't this be an ESOP? Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
That's the culture that we've been able to build at Moody's. You said it, an ownership mentality. And this is our state. What do we want our state to look like in 2 to 5 years? I know what we want it to look like. It's getting everybody engaged and making it happen.
You've mentioned a couple times today, a couple different spots, about the problem that we face with almost this elitist attitude that we see all the time. And when you're talking about building an ownership state, it feels to me like that's we're all in this together, let's all push the rock uphill together kind of mentality. And it feels like that is escaping us today. And no matter how good the leader is that we elect, it feels like that's a tough road to hoe a little bit. Why is it like this? I mean, where did we go wrong? And what can we do, I guess, besides electing somebody who has the right mentality at the top? What can we do to combat against this cultural war we seem to be at with each other, where it's elite versus the common man and everybody in between?
I'm not much of like a philosopher or whatever.
Yeah, that's a big question. But
I'd have to break it down and say it's almost like a tribal mentality. People hang around with like-minded, like-kinded people, and that's their circle. So, for someone to come with a competing thought or a thought-provoking different way of looking at things, there's an old saying, if you change the things you look at, the way you look at things will change. And I just don't think that as Americans and as Mainers in general, I think education, again, I get back to education. People get into education at 5 or 6 years old, they first go into school. And a big population of our education community never left. They've been their entire life. So their life's experiences outside of education may not be as broad as they may think it is.
Yeah.
There's a motorsports world out there. There's the sportsmen's with hunting and the trapping and those traditions. So
I think you're hitting on it. I mean, that's the key.
Like
is that
blue collar, white collar kind of thing, more so than it is political.
I don't think we know what each other's lives look like. It's somebody who's lived their entire lives in academia, and by the way, this isn't even a criticism, right? They go through college, then they go get a master's degree, then they go get a PhD, and then they go teach. Might not know what it's like to ride an ATV on the weekend, or go hunting, or go fishing, or what have you. And likewise in the opposite direction. It seems like that has got to be a core of what this is.
Well, the
about.
other thing, we are kind of, I am been talking a lot about education, but I think in the professional community at large, what we see is when they came out with subdivisions and deed restrictions, what we did unconsciously, unintended consequence, was you created a neighborhood that was pretty much everyone there is in a certain median income.
Yeah.
Versus when right. Look at you and Lauren right now. I'm the old guy here, but when I grew up, we could have like a Cape be next to a mobile home.
My
or
place
whatever.
was like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It was just like
not that long ago.
We were all neighbors. We were all friends, and we maintained friendships throughout our life. So I think what I bring in terms of life's experiences, knowing what it's like to live in a garage, fix a room up, live there for 2 or 3 years, one room, and sacrifice, to put money back into the business and grow it, to being able to sit at, the board of trustees at the university level and have good, healthy, provocative exchanges with people with PhDs, and very, very bright, educated people. It stimulates me. I'm learning, and I hope that I'm able to stimulate them to let them know that, hey, when we do contract negotiations, the person that's plowing the parking lot at USM is equally, in my view, as valuable as the person that's teaching economics.
Yeah.
Right? They all have a role to play and serve, and we need to respect those occupations equally.
Yeah, I think that's a mentality that's been missing for a long time around here. Unfortunately, Shawn, we're pretty much out of time here, so I do want to give one opportunity before we let you go to give us your pitch. I mean, what is the reason that Shawn Moody is the best option? Obviously, we've heard a lot in the last hour that hopefully would make that case.
Out, right?
But you got an elevator pitch, I'm sure, when you're asked on the campaign trail. So why is Shawn Moody the right choice for governor this year?
Well, I think. Seriously, I think you just got to look at a person's track record. I go a lot by accomplishment. What does a candidate accomplish in their own personal life? Because to me, if their role as governor is an extension of what they've been able to accomplish and bring, and they've had a great track record of success, then the odds are that they're going to continue that success, whether it's as governor or CEO of a company. And I think that's really my greatest strength is I'm tried and true, and I think the two pillars of any relationship are, trust and respect. And I think people are going to disagree with my policies, and there's nothing unhealthy about that. But I don't think there's many Mainers that have been introduced to me, my story or what I've accomplished, that wouldn't say that they trusted me or they respected me.
Yep.
And I think that those are the two pillars that we've got to build our political future on here in the state of Maine, because it's directly coordinated with, getting the legislature to work together, getting the state employees to work, hard and together, our educational community. Like you said, Matt, it's really as novel as that sounds, right? We're going to bring people together. It's like I told that group of the faculty senate. Are we willing to let go of some things here so we can move forward? I am. I don't have any baggage I'm bringing into this thing. I've got a good family, good life, and I just feel compelled to serve and bring all the experiences, relationships, and success that we've had to bear for the Maine people. They deserve it. They've earned it, and I hope in November they vote for it.
All right, well, that's a good pitch. Thanks a lot. Shawn Moody, Republican candidate for governor. Really appreciate you joining us here today on WGAN. We're doing these candidate interviews for all the major candidates running this November, so you'll stay tuned for some other ones coming up behind you. But Shawn, thanks again. Really appreciate being here.
Thank you. I miss Ken. We'll have to.
He did
separate
express
segment.
his regrets, and he's sorry he couldn't make it.
I like Ken a lot. He's a character.
Well, you might not be surprised by this, but he thinks a lot of you as well. So I'm sure he's sad he couldn't be here today. But we really appreciate you joining us. So stay tuned. In the meantime, however, for more candidate interviews here on WGAN.